Hey, everybody. Today we're going to be going over the 1995 Arnold Classic. Very significant contest for me. It was the very first Arnold Classic I ever attended. I was there as part of the production team, the TV production team for the 1 hour ESPN special, which was produced by a company called American Sports Network out of Rosemead, California. And I worked for that company as associate producer. Executive producer was Lou Zwick. And I'm going to get you guys started with a look at the intro to the show. The intros were these skits. For 2 years in a row, I went to this, 95 and 96. Both years, Lou filmed a little skit with Arnold. And this year, it was Arnold and Franco getting in a limousine, headed toward the Arnold Classic. And they have the program to the show. And they're flipping through it. They're looking at the competition, the competitors, I should say. And Arnold, he's astounded at how great all the guys look. And Franco is basically pumping up his ego, saying, "You're better than all these guys. Come on, man. You could beat these guys." Arnold is recognizing that it's a new era. These guys do look really, really good. The physiques have evolved quite a bit since the 70s. This was 20 years after Pumping Iron was filmed, and they're showing some clips there that my boss Lou had to get special permission to use. It's just a few clips. We got them. And again, I was bummed. I wanted to be part of the shoot. I was really hoping I would get to be there in that limo, but there was only room for Lou, the executive producer, and the cameraman. I assume they were in like a bench in the limo facing these two. And then they shot all these cutaways with the limo driver and so forth. So Arnold and Franco going over all the competitors and attributes, the veins and stuff. And yeah, I mean, to Arnold's credit, he's saying these guys are way better. And look at the leg development, look at the arms, look at the condition. The sport had changed quite a bit in the 20 years since Pumping Iron, and even in the 15 years since Arnold himself had retired after the 1980 Olympia in Sydney, Australia. And, he's basically coming to the conclusion that it's okay. It's okay. We had our time, we had our glory days, and now it's time to be promoters and put on the best shows we can. And there they are at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, where the show was held for many, many years until it was torn down a few years ago. Now, I said I was only going to show the top 6 in the title, but I also said I would show Lee Priest because Lee Priest here was only 22 years old. Wow. 5'4", 205. Because we talk about how great someone like Sam Sulek is now, and Sam looks great. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not putting Sam Sulek down, but look at this. Lee Priest, the same age there, 22. He actually turned 23 later in the year, but 22 years old here. Just phenomenal development. Those arms, the legs, just the thickness, the proportions, the density that he had. Condition was not great at this show, and that's why he was all the way down in 9th. Lee would go on to do much better at the show. He would take as high as 3rd place there. He had made his pro debut 2 years before at the Niagara Falls show, Niagara Falls Pro-Am, which my boss Lou had flown him out from Australia to compete in because we were covering it for our show, American Muscle. And Jim Mannion saw Lee at Gold's Gym Venice a week before the show. And that got him thinking, he should be a pro. Lee had already won the Australia championships a couple times at that point. I believe he won the first time when he was only 18 years old. And yeah, so he made his pro debut when he was only 20 at the Niagara Falls show. And, he was very, very good at a very young age. And the week before this, just a week before, he had taken 3rd place at the Ironman Pro Invitational behind Flex Wheeler and Aaron Baker, who we'll see both of those a little bit later coming up. But wow, he was just phenomenal at such a young age. You don't see that very often anymore. Rich Gaspari was the same way. Rich turned pro very young and was 2nd place at the Olympia, I think, by age 22. So that was 6th place. 5th place would go to Lee Labrada. Let's take a look at Lee. Okay, so this was Lee's final show as an IFBB pro. His first show had been the 86 Night of Champions, which he won straight out of the gate as his pro debut. He was obviously 2nd place at the Mr. Olympia in 89 and 90 to Lee Haney. 3rd place in 87, which was his debut. Great competitor immediately as a pro. Yeah, Lee had 7 pro wins, which was pretty amazing considering he was 185, 190 pounds and shorter and lighter than a lot of guys that beat him. And I was looking away. I was looking at my notes, but at one point in the audience, they flashed to his wife. Right, here we go. There's Hunter Labrada. There's Hunter as looks like he's about 3 years old there, maybe 4. So there's little toddler Hunter Labrada, who now is one of the top pro competitors in the IPB Pro League. But there he was just a little pup. And I want to say he's not much younger now than Lee was here by the time he retired. Lee turned pro a little bit younger, I believe, than Hunter did. Hunter started competing a little bit later and took his time. It was a different era. But, Lee was a tremendous poser, came in fantastic condition. And I think you could make strong cases for at least one of those Olympiads that he took second at, Tahani, 89 in Rimini, Italy, and 90 in Chicago, that he probably deserved the win because Lee was off both of those years. Lee Haney was off. I know it's not all about condition, but Lee was way off in 1990 in Chicago, the year that they drug tested. So, he went down as a legend, and this was the last show he ever did. He saw the writing on the wall. The sport was heading toward mass monsters, as he likes to call them. But he had an amazing run, still legendary, still known as one of the greatest posers of all time. Let's go to another guy who, unfortunately, is no longer with us, Andreas Munzer. So Andreas, he passed away the year after this at only 31 years old. So here he's only 30 years old. Yeah, he never won a pro show, but he was second at 3 shows. Two shows. Took second place at the 93 Night Champions Porto-Cottrell, 93 Grand Prix Germany to Kevin Levrone, third place at the 1990 Arnold Classic and the 91 Ironman Pro Invitational. He was known, as you guys probably know, for his condition. It's not even as evident here as it could be because we didn't have the resolution of these HD, 4K, 10K. We didn't have the resolution in the cameras that's available now. These were shot on Betacam, guys. These are the old days. This is 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. So you can't really appreciate the condition. Sometimes you'll see high-resolution images. Well, I shouldn't even say high-resolution. We didn't have digital photography yet. It would come along a few years later. At this point, everything was still on film. And you could see the cross striations evident in areas like his quadriceps, his triceps. He was never out of shape, consistently just shredded to the bone. And to this day, people still use his name as a reference for a standard of conditioning, saying someone was in Andreas Munzer condition, which means they were just shredded out of their skulls. And, he didn't have the prettiest physique. He wasn't the most massive guy, but he had a very proportionate physique. And like I said, he came in shredded to the bone every time. And that's what cemented his legacy. And rest in peace. He left us much, much too soon. Let's move on to another guy who is very, very underrated. You probably don't even know who he is if you're a newer fan to the sport. Talking about Charles Clairmonte. Charles Clairmonte out of Great Britain, United Kingdom now. He was a 3-time pro NABA Mr. Universe. NABA Universe was, for many years, as prestigious a title as the Mr. Olympia. It's an older title. It goes back to the 1940s, the NABA Universe. He was very, very successful in that organization. He did win 4 IFBB Grand Prix shows, beat guys like Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone a couple of times, would take 7th and 8th at the Olympia in 1993 and 1994, the 2 years that preceded this. Charles, yeah, I mean, when I say underrated, it's because, again, I don't think he got the recognition that he ever deserved. I don't think he got as many pro wins as he could have had. Not a massive guy, but geez, classic proportions. Every body part in harmony with every other body part, symmetrical from side to side, top to bottom. Everything was developed in proportion to everything else. Very much an old school kind of physique. Wasn't lacking any body parts. And you could see the mastery in the posing. he just took the sport to another level, a classic. So he's one of the guys I really feel the classic physique division was inspired by. We probably wouldn't have a classic physique if it hadn't been for him. Guys like him, Frank Zane, Bob Paris, Ed Corney, a lot of guys from that era. Okay, so let's move on to the runner-up. The runner-up was none other than a guy who had won this in 93 and would win it again a few more times for 4 total wins. We're talking about the great Flex Wheeler. This was Flex's comeback season. The year before this, 1994, he had crashed his car. I think it was a Porsche on the 10 freeway going very, very fast. I've heard reports it was about 150 miles an hour. Broke his neck, missed an entire year after just having a phenomenal rookie year where he won the Arnold Classic, the Ironman Pro, and then 3 Grand Prix shows. So 5 pro wins and second place at the Olympia in his rookie year, 1993. Amazing accomplishment. So obviously there were high hopes for Flex. 94, he goes and breaks his neck, unfortunately. A lot of people thought that was the end of Flex. It was not the end. It was far from the end. He would come back many, many more times. The week before this, he had just won the Ironman Pro show, which I was there covering the show for the American Muscle ESPN show program. And backstage, I remember Flex was eating cold pizza, much to the chagrin of a lot of the other competitors who were they're sitting there with their rice cakes and their peanut butter. And, he's chowing down on pizza, but that's how he was, man. He could get away with it. Condition here was not spectacular. That's what I think cost him the win. I think if there's his wife at the time, Madeline, the next one was his sister. Don't know her name, but you always knew she was in the audience because she did this thing like, oh, yeah. I can't even imitate it, but you could hear her from wherever she was sitting. She was very, very loud supporting her brother Flex. He was younger. I think he was the youngest out of his family. Not sure. But anyway, man, Flex Wheeler looked phenomenal there, taking second place. Wouldn't call it a controversial win, though. I think Mike Francois had this. So the guy I'm going to show you next, Mike Francois, this was his 30th birthday, March 4th, 1995. Mike had a pretty short career as a pro. It was cut short by colitis. He had to have most of his colon removed, and he never competed again after that. Just give you a little bit of background on Mike before we show him. He was the 1993 national champion, NPC national champion, heavyweight and overall. Came out of the gate very, very strong in his first pro season, 1994. He won his first 2 pro shows, which was the Night of Champions and the Chicago Pro. Significance of that Night of Champions, there's 32 men in that show. That was a huge lineup. And he beat Nasser El-Sambadi, who was great. So Mike Francois was somebody who I feel he would have been a top Olympian had he had the chance. He only did 9 pro shows, and he won 4 out of those. 4 out of those 9 shows, so pretty doggone good record. So here's Mike, 5'8", 240. I feel he had a very comparable physique to Dorian Yates. A lot of similarities. He had better leg development. Dorian had a better back, but Mike's back was pretty damn good. Mike had better arms than Dorian. What else we want to say about Mike Francois, man? Yeah, he only did the Olympia a couple times. He took 7th place in 94, the year before this. In 96, he took 10th place. 97, he came back to the Arnold, took third to San Jose. So he did the Olympia again that year, took 11th, and that was the end, 1997. So 94, 95, 96, 97, 4 seasons as a pro. Then he came down with that colitis, which prematurely ended his bodybuilding career. Some trivia about Mike. He had actually studied to be a priest. He was in the seminary. So he made it pretty far toward becoming a Roman Catholic priest. But he met woman who would become his wife, Shannon, and that was the end of his priesthood plans. He decided, he loved this woman and could not forsake her for becoming a priest. But he's still very active. He promotes NPC shows out of Ohio. He was a Columbus native, I believe. So hometown guy, winning the show on his birthday. Very, very significant there. I mean, how much better can you get than winning the biggest show after the Olympia, which is the Arnold Classic, in your hometown with the hometown crowd on your birthday. Fantastic win for Mike. And yeah, he was great, man. I think he would have been much better. His condition was pretty good. I think he would have gotten a handle on it and got even better condition as years went by. But, he had that colitis, which causes a lot of issues with digestion, as we've seen with guys like Carlos Thomas Jr., who's had to back out of a couple of shows because of his colitis. My son suffers from ulcerative colitis, just like Carlos, so I'm fairly familiar with it. It's a rough illness, rough condition to have to deal with. So let's go to the awards, guys, and that'll be it. So here we had the awards. Charles Clairmonte had just been announced in second. It's a very tense moment here because, Mike knew Flex Wheeler. Flex was no joke. Flex was an Arnold champ. He'd been second at the Olympia. And I think in better condition, Flex probably would have beat him because Flex just had such a beautiful shape, beautiful symmetry, proportions. But Mike had a small waist too. Mike didn't have bad shape at all. Did not have a gut. And like I said, Flex was off his best here. He'd just come back. He was just finding his way back after breaking his neck. And there he gets announced second place. Mike takes the title, $100,000 back then. This last Arnold Classic we had a few weeks ago was $400,000 for first place. So significant increase in the prize money since then. But I believe back then you also got a Hummer. You got a Hummer truck. And you got a Audemars PK watch. You got a great watch that came along with that. So here's that trophy. That trophy was very heavy. Arnold giving it to him. And yeah, has his hand raised up in victory by Arnold. And that would be it. That would be the pinnacle of his bodybuilding career. But, not many people could say they won the Arnold Classic, and he's one of them because we have some multiple champs. Guys like Flex won it 4 times. Dexter won it 5 times. So they took a lot of titles, a lot of Arnold Classic titles. But to Mike's credit, it was a fantastic showing. He did have a very, very good pro career that was cut short by that illness, by colitis. And I think, honestly, he would have gone on to do minimum top 5 at the Olympia. I think he was a potential Olympia champ, which we've said about a lot of people, but he had the goods, man. He had thick build. He had small waist, great structure. Shape was pretty good. So that was the 1995 Arnold Classic, guys. My first Arnold Classic, and I'll never forget that. It was a very memorable experience. I was glad to be part of it backstage and do all that, be part of the TV production. So guys, if you like what you see on the channel, please subscribe, like, share the videos on your social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is you have, X, I don't know. And ring that notification bell so you know when I have new content out. Appreciate you watching so much, trying to really build up this channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just hit subscribe, helps me out. And that's it. I thank you so much, guys, for watching. And until next time, I'll see you right here. Bye-bye now.